Hello and welcome to lesson 2 of week 3. In this lesson, we are going to look at the counting sort algorithm. My name is Mildred. Now, the counting sort works by counting the frequency of each unique element and then placing the elements directly in their correct sorted position. It's not just as straightforward as it sounds. What we do is to find the maximum in the array first, and then we create another array of items. Let's say we fill it with 0. So if we have the maximum value to be 9, to be 10 items, you need 0 to 9. Okay, so we're going to simulate this to see what we're talking about. Now, when we have an array like this, and let's say we have 3, 4, 6, 6, 3, 2, 1, 4. When you have an array like this, the first thing we do is to get the maximum number. The maximum here is 6, which means that we want to create an empty array called count. We want to fill this count with zeros. Index position 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we want it to have down to index position 6 because we have the maximum number to be 6 here. Then how we want to update this is the item at index. So this item 3, now number 3, you want to update the occurrence of 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3. We'll do this at index position 3 and we'll make it 1, and then you can pop this out. And then now we say 4. So let's have a copy of this before we start popping out. Okay, I want to manually simulate this so that it will make sense. So we update that to 1. So we have 4. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. We've seen 1. We make this 1, will pop out, right? Then we have 6. At index position 6, we have increase it, then it pop out. At index position 6, we have another 1, 2, it goes out. At index position 3, we have another 1, this becomes 2, we can take this out. At index position 2, 0, 1, 2, we have an item 1, right? And then we pop out. And index position 1, we have an item, we increase the frequency, we pop out. Index position 4, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, we have another item, and so we update this by 1, and then we pop out, right? So we now have the frequencies of the numbers 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, 0, 2, right? These are the frequency for the different items. So what we now do now is we have this count now. Now we want to use this now to rebuild back the original array. So let's say sorted now. So if we are doing this manually, so here at index position 0, we have 0 elements with the value 0, so we don't have to put anything. Now index position 1, we have 1 element with the value 1, so we'll put 1 here. Index position 2, we have 1 element with the value 2, so we put 2. 0, 1, 2, 3. So at index position 3, we have 2 elements with the value 3, so we'll put it 3. At index position 4, we have 2 elements with the value 4, so we'll repeat it. And then 5, we have 0 elements with the value 5, and 6, we have 2 elements with the value 6, so we do it like this. And so you see that the sorted now happens. And when we look at here the original array, we see we only have 1, 1, which is the lowest. We have 1, 2, then we have 2 3s follows themselves, we have 2 4s, and then 2 6, and then see how we rebuild the array. So this is the manual way. We can now code what we are doing here. Let's create a function. Well, we have 2 ways of doing this. What I just did here, you can create a function that goes through it and pops out whatever it takes when it counts the frequency, or we can just use a loop to do it. So let's say def count, let's say def counting array, or let's say def counting sort like this, and we'll pass in an array value. We want to, you can do the if not array return the empty list or something like that. We want to first of all get the maximum value, and we want to store this maximum value here. We have a list method called max that we use here, and we store it in the variable max value. Then we want to initialize the count array. We want to create a list called count, and we want to fill this list with zeros, and we want it to be the number of zeros we want should end at the last index position should be equal to the maximum item in the array. So it's going to be equal to max value plus 1. So we are going to multiply this by this to have that number of items. So if we look at how we manipulate list, you can use the multiplication symbol to fill in the list with a value. And what we are doing now is, if the maximum number, for instance, were to be 10, we will say 10 plus 1, 11, which means put 11 zeros here, such that the first index position is 0, the last index position is 10, which is equal to the maximum. So we have this count. The next thing we want to do now is to count the occurrence of each value in the array. So we can use a loop to say for num in the array, we want to count the occurrence. So we want to say that index position in the count plus equal 1. All right, so you just increment it by 1 if it is in the array there. So it will replace the zeros here with 1. It will add 1 to the zeros to implement it. And if it's not there in that array, it just makes it 0. Now we've done this loop. We want to now get the sorted array. Let's create an empty list for a sorted array like this. We want to loop through and get the index position and its value, maybe like in a tuple. So we can say for I, let's say for I count in, so we use enumerate function. So what we are doing here is to get the index position and the frequency. So in this count now, we already have like index position 0. How many occurrence of 0 is there? So that's what this is going to do. Based on the manual simulation we did, I'm sure you can understand this now. So we want to get this in a tuple to get the index position, the frequency in a tuple. And then now we want to now say the sorted array dot extend. So what we'll do here now is to say I times the count. So what it's doing here is it's going to add what the value of I is, the number of times it occurs. Okay, so what we are doing here, we're storing the index position. So the index position is going to be the value in the original array, and we want to put it the number of times of occurrence of that particular item, right? And then when we do this, we just want to return the sorted array. So this is one short form of doing this. It will say if name equal to main, we want to say let's create the array. So let's say input array is equal to, so let's create an array that has duplicates. Let's say 4 2 2 8 3 3 1 7 4 6 6, and then we want to print out the sorted input array. Okay, and then when we run this, we see it comes out sorted. So this is one way that we can do this. You can implement it the way we did it manually, where you use the pop method also as you go through it. So that way is to say you get the maximum value, you get the count like this, right? And then you want to use like a loop like this to say once it goes through it, like for, so maybe we can say while let's try to implement that. I'm going to comment this out and let's implement something else. So let's say def counting sort like this, and we want to say the max value. So we still need these two values here. I'm going to use those two, so we get the count. Then the next thing we want to say is, let's say while the length of the array, so we can say while the length of the array is greater than 0, we want to do something. And what we want to do is to say let's say we want to get a variable number which will pop something out. So it will pop, we use 0 here, so you can pop the first item. Anything that goes to index position 0, just keep popping out, right? And then we increase the count. So we say count num plus equal 1, like that. And then we can now use the for loop here to say for I in range the length of the count list, right? So for I in range length count list, we want to say if the value of the item in that count list is greater than 0, we want to take the array and append that value for I. So let me write it. So let it make sense. While count I is greater than 0, we want to say the array dot append I. Okay, so now after we finish popping, we want to now loop through this count list that we have. When we loop through this count list and the item at that index position is greater than 0, we want to append that's what the index position is, right? So this iterator, we append it there, and then we'll say count I minus equal 1. So I think this is what we manually implemented here, and we return the array. So this should do the same thing. Let me clear and run and see whether we get the same. So we get it sorted the same way. So you see what we did here is exactly what I did manually, but it feels like this is easier to think about than this. So you can just think about what the counting sort is carefully, and you can still think about more methods. There will be several ways you can think about this. You only know that you want to get the maximum value. You want to get a new list that has the last index position equal to the maximum value that you just found. So which means that if you have the maximum value to be 5, for instance, you are going to have 6 items in your count list filled with zeros, and then you are going to loop through to get the frequencies and update what is in the count from 0 to the frequency of the item that you have there, and then you now begin to replace them with The index position means the value of the item. And so if you have index position 0, if in your count list is 0, it means that 0 does not occur. If it is 1, it means that 0 occurred once. So you replace that to build back the list in sorted form, like that. Alright, so we want to look at the time complexity. And when we have n number of elements, right, and the range of number, let's say the range of number is k, so the time complexity will be n plus k, right, and the space complexity will be the same thing like the time complexity. And it is more efficient when we have the range of input numbers that is not much larger than the number of elements that we have. Okay, so if we have like 5 items, the range of the number, so it's not like we have 5 items but we don't have like the maximum number being 100 or something like that. So the worst case now will have the range of different possible values will now be big compared to the number of items we have. You have 5 items, you have your largest number be 1000. That's going to be the worst case, and that will put it at n square because of the range of numbers that you have. Okay, so the number of loops you have will be exponentially growing. So this is all about the counting sorts. Thank you and see you next week.